Who's the biggest hater of the Twilight saga? And which set featured a crew wearing jackets that said, "At least we're not on Terminator"? Watch to the end to find out the shocking truth about which actor shut down his own fans, all for the crime of loving his character. Hi, my name's Peter, and here's a list of celebs who went on to diss their characters and the movie scripts that brought them to life. Shia LaBeouf in Indiana Jones. 27 years had passed before Indiana Jones reappeared on the big screen, so it was a bit of a surprise to see Harrison Ford take up the hat and whip once again. But no matter how old the franchise is, a movie about the whipping, quipping Dr. Jones is still awesome, right? That's why there's no wonder why Shia LaBeouf was so upset about letting down millions of fans with the latest installment, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Shia opened up about it to the Los Angeles Times, saying, "I feel like I dropped the ball on the legacy that people loved and cherished. The fourth part was a gigantic blunder." And although Shia called out his acting as the main source of the problem, he also went on to diss the work of legendary super director Steven Spielberg. You're meeting a different Spielberg, who's in a different stage of his career. He's less of a director than a fucking company, LaBeouf told Variety. Shia didn't like how his character turned out, and in his pre-release interviews, he really gave the impression that he didn't enjoy working on the film in the first place. No wonder Harrison Ford called Shia a fucking idiot. As an actor, I think it's my obligation to support the film without making a complete ass of myself, Ford told Details. It might not be charitable for us to call Shia ungrateful, but that's what you do as a professional actor, right? You grin and bear it and try to hype your film and make it as big of a success as possible. Or, hey, maybe you appreciate it more when actors come out with all the gory details even before their films are released. Let us know what side you take in the comments. While Shia LaBeouf was the source of all his own troubles, let's see who tried to write off a bad character choice based on youth and lack of industry experience. Channing Tatum in G.I. Joe, Rise of the Cobra. When it comes to G.I. Joe, Rise of the Cobra, Tatum told Variety, "I was pushed into doing that movie. They signed me for a 3-picture deal, and as a young actor, you're like, oh my god, that sounds amazing, I'm doing that." But Tatum later lived to regret this decision, saying, "I'll be honest, I f***ing hate that movie. I mean, come on, Channing, tell us how you really feel." As a kid, Channing Tatum was a huge fan of the fictional soldier, so when the studio called on him to sign on for all 3 installments of the franchise, he couldn't have been more thrilled to star in these blockbuster action movies. In that same interview with Variety, Tatum recalled that the script was so bad that he wasn't sure if he wanted to play the titular plastic fantastic Joe at all anymore. But he had no other choice. The deal was already signed, and Tatum was contractually stuck. Channing himself admitted that there was no character development throughout the movie, and all the CGI in the world couldn't cover up the film's flaws. Still, it sounds like Tatum still isn't very particular when it comes to choosing a movie or role. During a Q&A session with fans on Reddit, he was asked what on earth the Wachowski movie Jupiter Ascending was all about. And Channing simply responded, "Good question. I have the same one myself." By this point, Channing couldn't blame a lack of experience for his terrible choice of roles. Still, his confusion is nothing compared to the infamously intense hatred Robert Pattinson has for Twilight. But we'll learn more about that later in the video. Emilia Clarke in Terminator Genisys. Just as he promised, the iconic war machine Terminator was back. Emilia Clarke stepped into the role of young Sarah Connor and got to work changing that grim and bleak future. Movie director Alan Taylor had already worked with Emilia on the set of Game of Thrones, so it must have been a shocking disappointment for Emilia that Taylor no longer seemed like the same director she knew from Game of Thrones. Clarke opened up in an interview with Vanity Fair, saying that no one had a good time on set. According to Emilia, Taylor was eaten and chewed up on Terminator. Sounds like he was a nervous wreck working on the film, and that anxious attitude is reflected in the crew and ultimately the movie itself. Even though Clarke wrapped her comment with trademark laughter, it's clear she was upset, especially when she explained that the Fantastic Four team that was filming nearby had jackets that read, "At least we're not on Terminator." Considering the debacle around that movie, that's really saying something. Fantastic Four probably needed some laughs, with an out-of-control director and a clueless movie studio, but they didn't laugh for long as their movie bombed just as badly at the box office, while Genisys was just sort of forgotten. It turns out that box office anonymity played into Emilia's hands. Clarke said that she felt relieved she didn't have to do another movie, but that wasn't the case for the next actor on our list. Matt Damon in The Bourne Ultimatum. While Jason Bourne lost his identity, Damon took on the character as part of his own. I mean, he had to after playing the infamous assassin over the course of 14 years. Perhaps that's the reason why Matt got mad at scriptwriters for almost ruining the whole franchise. Back in 2007, Damon had an issue with the writer of The Bourne Ultimatum, Tony Gilroy. Matt was so disappointed in the shoddy storyline and where his character was headed that he made some fiery comments that he might have later regretted. He let it all slip in an interview with GQ. It's really the studio's fault for putting themselves in that position. I don't blame Tony for taking a boatload of money and handing in whatever he handed in, it's just that it was unreadable. This is a career ender. I mean, I could put this thing up on eBay and it would be game over for that dude. It's terrible, it's really embarrassing. He was having a go, basically, and he took his money and left. Yep, Damon was incandescently angry, but he clearly worried that his carelessness would cost him dearly as, according to The Hollywood Reporter, Matt had to call Gilroy to preemptively clear things up before the interview came out. Matt Damon was probably aware that make one mistake and you could end up on our Why Hollywood Won't Cast Them Anymore video. In contrast to some of our previous actors, the next one tries to make fun of all his failures. Ryan Reynolds in Green Lantern. There are so many reasons why Green Lantern failed, it would take too long to list them all. All we should mention, and Reynolds agrees, is that the movie sucks. During a Comic-Con panel, one fan was brave enough to ask a question that we all wonder about occasionally. Which movie does Reynolds hate the most? X-Men Origins or Green Lantern? That's a pretty provocative question, but luckily Ryan has a sense of humor. However, no matter how much Reynolds can mock those movies in Deadpool, answering such a question publicly would mean acknowledging to the world that he does indeed hate one or both of those movies. Ryan had a brilliant answer, staying as discreet as possible by saying, "Both have been an endless spring of jokes for Deadpool. Both were amazing experience to work on, and I loved working on them. As an actor, you're blessed to be in that position, to shoot any movie that size. So I appreciate the chance. But both were really pretty bad." As answers go, that's surprisingly mature for the man who came to embody the Merc with a mouth. Talking to Entertainment Weekly, Reynolds praised the work of all team members and blamed none of them for Green Lantern's failure, because those people were working hard. Ben Affleck in Daredevil. You might have forgotten, the world might have moved on, but before Avengers, before Iron Man even, Ben Affleck played Marvel's blind lawyer by day, super enhanced superhero by night, almost 16 years ago. However, the cheesy critical disaster reared its head again after Netflix's great Daredevil adaptation series ended just last year. Turns out, Affleck was very disappointed with the movie. In a Time Talks interview, Ben revealed that he actually likes superhero movies, but the film adaptation of Daredevil didn't quite capture the character right. Ben revealed, part of it was, I wanted for once to get one of these movies and do it right. To do a good version. I hate Daredevil so much. And Affleck had such a bad time, he went on to agree to be Batman. Ben clearly has a bit of an issue when it comes to superhero movies. Talking about his experience when it came to Batman, Affleck admitted, I tried to direct a version of it and worked with a really good screenwriter, but just couldn't come up with a version. I couldn't crack it. He also said all the scripts he received just weren't good enough, so he ultimately stepped down from starring in the upcoming installment of Batman, scheduled for 2021, passing on the cape and the cowl to Robert Pattinson and handing the torch to another director. While we're talking about Pattinson, let's talk about an actor who managed to stay with his franchise all the way from beginning to end, despite his intense loathing for the part. Robert Pattinson in Twilight. It seems like no one hates Twilight more than Edward Cullen himself, Robert Pattinson. Twilight has built a huge fandom all over the world that is still going strong to this very day. So to hear the lead actor criticizing his own character and the plot of both the movies and the novels likely broke the hearts of millions of fans. In numerous interviews, Pattinson made it very clear that he didn't like his character or the script.
There's a lot of stuff in the Twilight world that doesn't make any sense.
Lots of Robert's responses are actually pretty funny, sardonic, sarcastic, and witty enough that many fans actually appreciate his slightly acerbic honesty about how he really feels. But at the same time, it's weird to hear an actor putting a film franchise he willingly chose to take part in again and again on blast. The role of the, to quote Robert, slightly constipated and stoned-looking vampire boosted Pattinson's career tremendously after all. In one interview with E!, Robert mentioned that his first thought after reading the source materials was that the book wasn't supposed to have been published. To him, and many Twilight haters will likely agree, reading that first book was like being an unwelcome guest to the writer's more intimate sexual fantasies. As Robert explained, this woman is mad. She's completely mad and she's in love with her own fictional creation. And sometimes you'd feel uncomfortable reading this thing. Penn Badgley in You. If you haven't seen the series, there's just 3 facts you need to know to understand the situation. Gossip Girl alumnus Penn Badgley plays a bookstore manager who also happens to be a stalker and a murderer. So it just so happens that this awful murderer is portrayed by a certified hottie. Well, according to the comments on Twitter, that is, Penn got pretty worried that people might romanticize the thoroughly detestable character and even find it in their hearts to sympathize with him. So if you happen to tell the people of Twitter that you think the male protagonist of You is pretty dreamy, you may well get a sobering retweet from Badgley himself. Penn, of course, highlighted that his comments are all tongue-in-cheek and that he doesn't intend to troll any fans in love with his character. However, he urges those self-same fans to recognize that Joe is not a romantic guy and that we shouldn't forget that he's a murderer after all. For Penn, it could be a call to make his character even more explicitly and overtly creepy in the second season. That way, fans will recognize that Joe is far from being perfect boyfriend material. So while Badgley definitely enjoys his work, he definitely doesn't like his character's persona.
He is a lone something, and then he becomes a lone wolf.
For taking responsibility and teaching his young fans that they shouldn't mistake obsessive behavior for genuine affection, Penn takes star place at the top of our list. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay awesome. And don't forget to subscribe to our new channel, Awesome Movies, if you're looking for more series and movie Easter eggs.